Judge Pearson didn't even look up when he threw the words across the courtroom, sharp and cold like a blade. "Are those real medals, or did you buy them off the internet, old man?" The air in the room tightened. The smell of lacquer, old paper, and arrogance filled the silence. On the stand stood Arthur Blake, an 83-year-old U.S. Army veteran from Iowa. Short, thin, but standing straight as a flagpole, wearing a faded denim jacket and a T-shirt with a worn Semper Fi patch. Pinned to his chest, 3 neat rows of ribbons. Among them, a silver star. That was the one that made the judge squint. "Your Honor," said Lauren Meyer, Arthur's attorney, rising, "my client's service decorations have nothing to do with this speeding citation." "I'll decide what matters in my courtroom," the judge snapped. "Take off the jacket, sir. This isn't the VFW hall." Someone chuckled nervously. The bailiff froze. Arthur didn't move. His hands rested calmly on the rail, sinews like old rope under the skin. He stared, not at the judge, but at the flag of Iowa behind him, the only thing in the room that deserved his attention. "Did you not hear me?" Pearson barked. "Either you remove that jacket, or you'll be held in contempt." Lauren took a step forward. "Your Honor, with all due respect is earned," the judge cut her off, "not bought with shiny toys." That was when Arthur lifted his gaze, steady, unreadable. "My service doesn't need your approval," he said quietly. The simplicity of it made the judge furious. "In this room, it does," Pearson growled. "Last warning." But before the sentence ended, the doors burst open. The brass handle slammed against the paneling. Every head turned. A man in full uniform strode in, General Mitchell, lean, silver-haired, eyes like steel. 2 officers followed behind him. His voice cracked through the silence like thunder. "Which one of you demanded Sergeant Blake take off his jacket?" Pearson stumbled for words. Mitchell didn't wait. "This man is the reason 30 of my soldiers came home alive. And you question his honor in front of that flag?" Nobody breathed. Arthur just smiled faintly, the kind of smile that comes from a lifetime of no longer needing to prove anything. Mitchell turned to the judge. "Apologize, out loud, now." I'm sorry," Pearson stammered. The arrogance was gone. Only a tremor remained. Arthur zipped his jacket back up. The sound of it echoed like a full stop, and the room exhaled at last. Rain started the moment Arthur stepped out of the courthouse, a steady, heavy kind that washes dust off everything, even pride. Lauren held an umbrella over him, though he kept nudging it away. "You didn't have to stay silent," she said softly. He smiled without looking up. Words didn't save anyone back then. Doing did. By morning, the photo from the courtroom had gone viral. Judge humiliates veteran, General walks in. Sergeant, who refused to take off his jacket, restores America's faith and honor. Arthur ignored the calls. He didn't fear attention. He feared the emptiness that came after applause. The silence that visits when the cameras stop rolling. Letters began arriving in stacks. Blue envelopes from Texas, Nebraska, Montana. "My father was just like you. My grandfather wore the same star. Thank you for not unzipping your courage." Children sent drawings, flags too big for the page, shaky handwriting spelling, "Thank you, hero." Arthur smiled for the first time in a long while. That evening, someone knocked on the door. 3 young men stood outside, clean-shaven, but their posture betrayed years of discipline. Marines. "Sir," one of them said, "we just wanted to thank you. We needed to see this." Arthur invited them in. 4 cups of coffee. The smell of roasted beans filled the small kitchen. No speeches, no war stories. Just silence that meant understanding. The next morning, a letter arrived, embossed with the seal of Iowa. The governor hereby awards Sergeant Arthur Blake the Iowa Medal of Honor for service and courage. At the bottom, recommended by General Mitchell. Arthur folded the letter neatly and tucked it into the box where his medals rested. Then he pulled out one ribbon, the oldest one, blue faded to gray, and pinned it to his chest. Not for pride, for peace. That afternoon the phone rang. Unknown number. A pause. Then a voice he hadn't heard in 15 years. "Dad." Arthur's breath caught. "Tom?" Another silence, heavy and fragile. "I saw the news," his son said. "I didn't realize, I didn't know what it meant to you, what you gave up." Arthur's voice stayed calm. "And I didn't know what it cost you not to understand. You coming by?" "Yeah," Tom said quietly. "But not alone." Arthur looked out the window. The rain had stopped. The clouds began to break. "Then come," he said. "It's time." They met on a quiet Sunday. Tom stood on the porch, a boy by his side, about 8, clutching a toy plane and watching Arthur with cautious curiosity. "Dad," Tom said, voice cracking between guilt and hope, "this is your grandson, Ethan. He likes to build things, and ask why." Arthur crouched down until their eyes met. "Then he'll fit right in," he said with a smile that felt strange on his face after so many years. Ethan smiled back, unsure but real. Lunch was simple. Chicken pot pie, salad, and the scent of fresh coffee that lingered in every corner of the house. Conversation was halting at first, like an old engine trying to start after years of silence. But slowly it found rhythm. Tom, eyes lowered, finally asked the question that had haunted him since childhood. "Dad, what really happened that night? The one you never talked about?" Arthur was quiet for a long time. The clock ticked. The wind moved the curtains. Then, with a voice low and even, he began. "It was raining hard that night. We were pulling out under fire. Rotor blades slicing rain into mist. Everything sounded like thunder and heartbeats. I was leading the rear squad when I saw him, a boy, maybe 12, lying in the mud, staring at the sky." He stopped for a moment, swallowing hard. "I didn't think about orders, didn't think about consequences. I thought about his father, whoever he was, and what it would mean never to get another chance to make something right. So I went for him. My CO shouted for me to fall back. I kept going." Arthur's hands tightened around his mug, knuckles white. "The bullet caught me in the shoulder, but I grabbed the kid and ran. By the time we got to the chopper, I couldn't feel my arm. Someone pulled me in, and that's the last thing I remember before waking up in the field hospital. They told me the boy survived. Then they told me it wasn't in the report, that it never happened." Tom sat frozen. Ethan stopped playing. Arthur looked at both of them and said quietly, "I stopped talking about it because nobody wanted to hear it, but I never stopped living it." Tom's eyes filled. "I was angry at you for being distant. I didn't realize you were just trying to hold the pieces together." Arthur's voice softened. "You were angry because I never taught you how to see the silence behind a man's eyes." "That's my fault." They both laughed, the kind of laugh that breaks before it heals. Ethan crawled into his grandfather's lap, showing him the bridge he was building out of toy blocks. "It keeps falling," he said, frustrated. Arthur took one stray piece, wedged it gently between two unsteady ones. "There," he said. "Sometimes the piece that looks useless is the one that holds it all together." The boy nodded solemnly, as if he'd just been given a secret. Tom watched them. the man he'd misjudged for half a lifetime, and the boy who'd grow up knowing better. And for the first time in years, Arthur felt something he'd long forgotten the shape of: belonging. That night, when the house went still, Arthur sat at his desk and wrote one line on an old notepad. "I am not a hero. The heroes didn't come home. I just live for them. And tonight, I finally started living." 2 weeks later, Arthur found himself standing in front of the local community center, a low red brick building with a faded flag and a squeaky door that had seen too many winters. Inside, rows of chairs were set up for Veterans Coffee Morning. He had passed the flyers for years without ever going in, but this time his son had printed one and left it on his kitchen table, circled in pen. The first few minutes were awkward. The men in the room, gray hair, prosthetic limbs, weathered faces, nodded politely but said little. Until one of them, a former Navy radio operator, asked, "You're the sergeant from that courtroom thing, ain't ya?" Arthur sighed, half embarrassed. "Guess so, but I'd rather be remembered for the coffee I make than for standing still." The room chuckled softly. It broke the ice better than any speech could. They talked for hours, about old missions, about loss, about nights when the silence was louder than any battle. One man admitted he hadn't slept through the night in 20 years. Another confessed he hadn't spoken to his daughter since '95. Arthur just listened, nodding, occasionally offering the kind of words that didn't come from therapy books. "We don't get over it," he said. "We just learn to carry it better." Someone wrote that down. By the next week, that line was printed on the bulletin board at the entrance. It became their motto. News spread. Younger veterans, men from Iraq, Afghanistan, cause began to show up. They'd seen the clip, read the articles, but they came not for the story, for the silence that Arthur carried, the calm he'd earned the hard way. One day, a reporter showed up. He asked for an interview. Arthur smiled politely and pointed to the coffee pot. "That's my statement," he said. Steam rose like a salute. When he got home that night, he found a small package on his porch. Inside was a note in neat handwriting. "You probably don't remember me. I was the boy you pulled from the mud. I live in Oregon now. Wife, 2 kids. Thank you for not letting me die that day. You didn't just save me. You saved everyone who came after." Arthur sat on the porch for a long time, watching the sun dip below the cornfields. The air was still. The sound of cicadas rose and fell like breath. He realized that for the first time in 50 years, the world felt quiet. Not empty, just finally at peace. He folded the letter and slipped it beside his medals, whispering, "Guess we both made it home, kid." And as dusk settled over Iowa, the porch light flickered on, soft and golden, like a medal pinned to the house itself. He didn't need applause. He didn't need a parade. He had his family, his coffee, and the kind of silence only the brave ever earn.